record Chandra Carter, Executive Director for Texas Juvenile Justice Department. First, we really sincerely thank you for your continued support, especially in the introducing of SB 1, which provides salary increases for both state and county level staff. This remarkable investment will have direct impact on the safety of our facilities, our juvenile probation detention centers, and ultimately the public. The state salary increases provided during the 88th session have really shown tremendous results in our ability to recruit and retain. In July of 22, we had 165 youth on the wait list, and our facilities were operating at about 200% capacity. It was incredibly dangerous. The state and counties alike were under tremendous strain caused by a nationwide understaffing in corrections and law enforcement in other areas. Today, the wait list has been reduced to 115 youth, and our facilities are collectively operating around 135 to 150%. The drop from 165 to 115, I don't think clearly represents the amount of churn. We didn't just absorb 50 youth. Since last session, we have had 1,123 unique individual youth admitted to TJJD. Since July of 2022, we have increased our JCOs by 200 employees, which has allowed us to increase our youth population by 200 youth. Since December of 22, our facilities have operated primarily under normal programming and have a very occasional restricted scheduling, which is often due to call-ins. And so slides 2 and 3 really illustrate this progress, and this progress is really due to your investment. We're still optimistic about the progress we're making, and we're still aware there are staffing issues that we need to address to maximize safety. As filed, SB 1 strengthens the foundation to meet our mission of building a unified juvenile justice system based in safety, accountability, and transparency. With the necessary resources, we are confident that we have the expertise and skill that will allow us to meet the mission and ultimately reduce recidivism and improve public safety. An essential component of our success hinges upon stable, secure facilities. In order for us to effectively address criminogenic risk, the environment must be safe. And this safety is contingent upon enhanced staffing levels to address the youth's individual risk and needs, accountability for our youth, and resources for the Office of Inspector General. SB 1 represents a significant investment in the safety of our staff and facilities, so consequently, our updated exceptional items prioritize funding for the Office of Inspector General, additional resources for our county juvenile probation departments, and formula funding that reflects the risk levels of the youth committed to TJJD. Parallel with enhancing state operations, additional resources are essential to support the local juvenile probation departments. They serve every single youth in the juvenile justice system, and they are able to keep 99% of these youth local. They are our shallow end of the system, and really they are unyielding in their efforts to keep youth closer to home. An important data point is in fiscal year 24, 78% of the youth that were admitted to TJJD had 3 or more felony or misdemeanor referrals. So they've already recidivated, and the counties are doing everything they possibly can to keep them local, and those resources get tapped out, and that's when a commitment happens. The filed bill provides an impressive $532.3 million for juvenile probation departments. SB 1 and our remaining exceptional items reflect what the counties are realistically able to accomplish for this next biennium. These include resources necessary to maintain the existing levels of diversion and probation services as prices and costs continue to rise, building out additional residential community programs, and increasing early prevention and intervention programming. We also have a supplemental ask of $13 million that will reimburse the counties for serving the youth on the wait list. The last piece of our understaffing puzzle is the location of our secure facilities. Last session, the Sunset Commission recognized that while the agency has plenty of physical bed space, the rural location of these facilities do not allow us to recruit the number of staff necessary to supervise those available physical beds. The 88th legislature provided $200 million for an additional 200 state secure beds with guidance to serve youth with the highest level of mental health and aggressive behavior treatment needs. And the increasing acuity of these populations can be seen in your handouts on slide 5. The agency is working diligently with state and county partners to identify 2 sites for our new builds. These locations must offer both population levels for staffing and solid community support to ensure long-term success. To complete the project, we are requesting an additional supplemental of $104 million. Recognizing the significant investment already included in SB1, we have carefully reprioritized our exceptional item requests and respectfully ask for your consideration for the funding outlined on slides 6 and 7. And we are also in full support of the request for the Office of Independent Ombudsman. And this concludes my prepared remarks, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Senator Hinojosa. Okay, there you go. Thanks for that. Woke us up.
Wake everybody up.
But now you can ask your questions.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know what happened there, but all this high-tech stuff.
I know, it's complicated.
But I just have a couple of questions because I know since I've been here on the Senate side, we've been trying to find ways to reform and improve our juvenile justice system. It used to be called TYC, Texas Youth Commission. And challenge after challenge, we provide more funding, provide additional reforms, more tools, but we can't seem to get over the hump, so to speak, as it relates to making sure that our young people who commit crimes are reformed and helped out. What do you think are the main problems and challenges that, we can talk about staffing. It's been a real challenge at TDCJ, and obviously with the juvenile justice system. But is the answer just providing more funding, or do we have to make some fundamental changes in the way the system is structured?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think funding is the sole answer. If you speak to staff that have been with the agency for any length of time, there's just been a constant turnover in efforts and reform and initiatives and what we're doing and how we're moving forward. And so sticking with a one reform effort for more than 2 or 3 years is, frankly, allowing us to gain some traction and really putting forward to change the culture. My analogy is I'm turning the Disney cruise liner around in the Panama Canal, and it is slow and steady to change culture. I am confident that we're making progress internally with that culture and moving things along. I think I have been permanent ED for 2 years. Some of the culture change that I have had to shift to is a real focus on safety. And a prioritization of safety in the facility and safety in the community. Certainly, yes, they are youth. They are in need of rehabilitation. But without the foundation of safety, none of that occurs. And so it's taken some time to build that out, but I do believe we're in a much better space.
Well, and as I recall, one of the issues that we tried to deal with was location of facilities, where you could not get the proper professional staff to be able to assist the youth incarcerated. And I know last session we funded 2 new facilities to help out in that respect. Are we making any progress trying to shift some of those rural facilities, for lack of a better word, that are somewhat isolated, where we cannot get the proper staff to assist the youth people?
Yes, certainly we're making progress. I don't think it's as fast as we would like. In full transparency, June 1st of 2023, I met with the ED of TFC saying, this is not my arena. We need help and we need expertise. And we really have relied upon them and their guidance to move us through this process. When I met with him, I asked him how long it would take for us to secure property. And he said, really, you should anticipate 18 months. And that's 18 months from the time of identifying what locations you want to look at. And so we had months of waiting for a feasibility study, and then we've got the locations, and a variety of things have come up that have been hurdles for us, but we maintain and we're steadfast in moving forward. Like I said, none of us were experts, but Rachel Gandy, my chief of staff, has become a default expert and can certainly fill you in on what the processes look like.
Absolutely. I think a lot of y'all's staff that we have chatted with have heard this from me a whole bunch of times, that we're looking for a needle in a haystack. I would actually revise that. We're looking for 2 needles that are hidden across 254 haystacks. So we conducted a feasibility study to first figure out where would we be able to land that's a good fit for the community and that has a large enough population that we'd be able to pull from. Once we conducted that study, we then really hit the pavement, working with our county partners, state partners, with a private broker to explore both government-owned and privately owned properties, and try to, again, analyze what's a good fit for us and a community. That has required doing due diligence work, tours, stakeholder outreach, economic analysis. And so where we stand right now is we've found one spot that we're really excited about. That's with LBB for approval. And we're working on that second location in the greater Houston area. We have a couple of options that we're doing that analysis I just mentioned to figure out what would be best for the system overall.
Okay, one more issue, and that is you have a special item request with a risk-based funding. Could you tell us about a little bit of how that works, how you see that working, and what the problem is and the challenge are?
Yeah, absolutely. This is pretty exciting for us to think about. Right now, our daily rate is just a flat daily rate across the board for all youth. But I assure you that the youth in the system are not all the same. I have one group of youth that will cost me $300 a day, and I have another group of youth that are going to cost me $800 a day. And so we're really trying to classify and track what these increasing numbers look like. And I think much like you've heard from Director Collier, like we have a skyrocketing need for mental health treatment. I think it's different than the HHAC mental health treatment because my primary role is addressing criminogenic risk. And so those youth are typically too aggressive and violent for that side of the system. So by default, I'm having to develop those systems. And then aside from that, I have levels of aggression that are jaw-dropping. In the last fiscal year, I have 478 reports of assault on staff with injury by youth. And so really trying to figure out how to develop these two systems and track them and separate them, I think will help us identify what services we're needing. And really it also is showing me that the counties are, you may hear like the counties aren't sending the right kids. The counties are sending kids that completely make sense to be in our system, and just figuring out how much they cost to care for and separating them from potentially more vulnerable populations is what we're trying to do.
Well, we do that type of funding with other state agencies like public education, so interesting. I was not aware that the funding would be equal as per capita basis as compared to trying to identify and focus on those juveniles that had a greater need than others.
An example is my most violent and aggressive youth have, my ratios are 1 to 8 for a general population. The youth that are the most violent and aggressive, I will only allow 4 in a unit, and they will have 2 staff. So that is a 1 to 2 ratio, and those staff are still being assaulted. And so the same thing with my highest acute. I have essentially an inpatient psychiatry unit, and those youth are also in that 2 to 4 ratio.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Flores.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Directors, a few questions. So fundamentally, we're having a lot of assaults.
Yes, sir.
And then I recognize you just only got there, which is a couple of years. So I think in previous conversations and visits to the facility, let's talk about the tone of the facilities, which I think a lot of times contributes to whether your programs will be successful if you don't have order. And that, the example I give is, let's talk about your juvenile correctional officer. Would you agree that your facilities are the primary first priority of your mission of your agency is public safety?
Yes, I call them my MVPs. They spend the most time with the youth.
Oh,
Yes.
But the public safety is why you exist.
Yes.
And these youth offenders, of course, the counties do about 90%. That not a lot of people know. 90% of corrections for youth is done by the counties, and then you got about 10%, and so but they're some of the most violent, and so I think that the establishment of setting the tone of that it's a correctional facility. I know you've come from previous directors that took it to where it was more social engineering and lost fact, and the end result was that I think that you're looking at the recidivism. It was very high and still remains high. Assaults, and that also affects your ability to recruit and retain. We can pay all day long, but if you're not going in there and it's not a safe environment and there's not a system of order,
Waiting list.
sometimes it's just as simple things. I noticed it's 71.4% turnover for JCOs in 2024, according to the information I have, and TDCJ turnover rate was 27%. So how do you propose to solve that problem?
I mean, those turnover rates, we know that we're the worst state agency for turnover, and it's certainly something we discuss all the time. It doesn't matter how much money I offer, if it's not safe, people are not going to stay. And so certainly there have been significant culture changes we've had to make. I mean, even from changing the job title from coach to juvenile correction officer. Or changing, we have facility names that were state schools. And so if somebody's applying to be a coach at a state school, in all reality, this is a prison. You are a juvenile correctional officer in a correctional setting. And so we've had to do some of that shifting. So there's internal and external accountability. And so the internal accountability has definitely taken some time. The amount of referrals for determinate sentence offenders for early transfer requests to TDCJ have grown significantly since I've been in charge. But part of this is if you are a determinate sentence offender and you assault a staff one time, I am requesting an early transfer request. You do not get a second chance. And so those are definitely things that we have been changing. And certainly developing a behavior management program has taken time. I think how I describe it to my team is we have been doing a lot of work of planting seeds, and we are really in the place where we're seeing the flywheel about to spin, so much so that our ombudsman's getting complaints about the accountability that's occurring. So that's telling me we're making progress, but it is a slow process for us, correct?
Thank you. So some of the things that I observed, it was I couldn't tell who was the correction officer and who wasn't. I'm sure that the inmates know, but still something as simple as providing a uniform. I go to the county facilities in my district, and you clearly know that who the correctional officers are, because they wear a uniform, and they establish order, and then they know who the teachers and the counselors are. I didn't see that, and nor did I see any request in your appropriation for uniforms and things that. Would you be receptive to doing something as simple as that, as beginning into the culture shift that this is a correctional facility, and providing that sense of order, and so that your programs can continue to succeed would be. I would. That's something that I observed that I'd like to talk about in finance, because it's not in there, and we can certainly put it in there. But establishing that order and having it as a correctional facility is something that is fundamental to the program, so that you don't have correctional officers assaulted, so you don't have a place where programs can't work because there's no sense of structure. I'm not saying that's on the whole. That's just based on what I observed and what I've seen from the difference between the county lockups and TDCJ and TJJD. So that's something I would encourage you to do, as far as setting the tone as to what these facilities are, so that these programs can be effective. So we'll talk about the building of the new facility. So, and I understand your frustration, having myself done projects when I was in state government, when working, how long it takes to do capital projects, and navigating that. I understand that, but of course in the planning there also goes with staffing them. And I'm sure, so tell us what you're doing in the planning for these two facilities. What's in your mind? What's in your strategic plan to staff them if you're having these staffing problems already?
It's the feasibility study that we contracted for. That was the one and only thing that was the deal breaker. I cannot build anything in a place that I cannot staff it. So we had to look at available employees who would be willing to work for the wage that we currently have. And for example, in my Brownwood facility, currently the population of unemployed people is 600, where in my facility in the Valley, the population of unemployed people that I could pull from is 21,000. So we contracted out for somebody to really give us the areas where we could actually ensure some high levels of staffing for the numbers that we're needing.
So the capital authority, you got, Madam Chair, is that 200 million? Is that capital authority just specific for two buildings, or capital authority for facilities?
Particular appropriation, the legislature has been pretty restrictive about, we were trying to control the narrative. So it was for acute mental needs and the violent offenders. I mean, that's, you know, we've been working, as you said, Senator Flores, we've been working on this a long time,
Yes.
along with Senator Whitmire, and we kind of tunneled into what we could see the needs really were as the counties kept more and more people. So yes, sir, that was very specific about how they could spend the money.
So as we look at efficiencies, and again, I understand about the staffing, but of course, there's ways to work around it. Mr. Collier just came in and said where you had facilities where you had staffing problems, he was building bachelor officer quarters or housing. Other places have had housing as part of an incentive, either free or subsidized, to bring people in. Let's just talk about MART. So MART is one of your newest facilities, correct?
Art is the newest field, yes,
At
and it was
1,000
actually built for a correctional environment.
Actually built for it.
Yes.
1,000 beds
We have 578 physical beds there.
that are used or unused.
No, so there are 578, like, if I moved everything out, I could have 578 beds. Operationally, I think we're looking at 200 and some today. Part of this is the amount of youth that I'm safely able to have in one location. Having 16 youth in one location versus 24 or 32 youth, and the numbers just really increase risk. And so we currently today have 230 kids, youth there,
So
around there, yes.
300 beds, more or less.
Yeah, there's 300 available beds. I just don't have the humans to supervise those beds.
So would it be plausible with Capital Authority to build housing there to bring people in that like Mr. Collier is doing in Fort Stockton and the West to bring them in from Waco or Temple or Fort Cavazos, the soldiers that are coming out of there, and having that housing incentive to work at a facility like MART and increase your capacity, that type of thinking.
Yeah,
To be able to address that, I mean, and it's also goes along with DOGE. It's government efficiency. Why build more and can't staff it, and when you can't not staffing what you got, but yet have the capacity is already there. It's just a matter of the people. So trying to think about how to bring those people there to work, and using Capital Authority to build housing there as an incentive. I think you can better utilize facilities like MART, and those 300 beds can be utilized more effectively.
I think both Mart and Giddings could be available for housing, as well as maybe some busing, public transportation.
That's for you to figure out
Yes.
how to make it work. But but you have the facility already, and it's a new facility, and it was built for you by that area. But as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong. So that type of thinking, I think, as we move forward, a good setting the tone that is a correctional facility. You have a sense of order. Your officers are uniformed. They know who they are. You have that structure, and then I think things will start to work a little better. We'll do what we can to be able to, I think there's support to be able to support your mission. The mission's very important to us, or you wouldn't exist. So I just want to be able to have those type of discussions in finance of how we are expending our money for your agency, and whether you're accomplishing your mission or not. Whether we're throwing money into the build facilities that you won't be able to staff. And how to be able to think outside the box to be able to solve problems, but while understanding the core mission that is a correctional facility, and we want to reduce that recidivism, which right now is unacceptably high. So I appreciate the difficulty of your mission, and appreciate the fact that you and the other employees of this agency are doing the best you can with what you got. But at times, and that you're going through a transformational process, but as long as you remember what the core mission is, and establish that culture that it's a secure facility, I think things will start to move positively for you. So I mean, I can go on and on about a number of things, but we can do that offline. But I just wanted to express that, always remember what you're there for. Keep that place secure. Put uniforms on those officers so they know who they are, and let's work together to be able to ensure that you have success. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Flores. Senator Colcourse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to kind of weave in and out here. You said 578 beds. Is that what y'all are currently staffed?
No, ma'am.
I don't know where I get the 578. I just
Yeah, so it is the physical bed capacity of one facility, so the MART facility is the one facility that was actually built for adult corrections that we were able to get. The other 4 facilities were not built for correctional environments. And so and it's the same thing with Giddings. I think Giddings has probably 350 beds, but what I do is I put in as many youth as I can safely maintain without putting them in lockdown. And so I try not to go over 150% capacity. When we were at 200% capacity, it was tremendously dangerous for staff. And ultimately, I had to make the choice to put the youth back for operational room confinement. So it is a dance because I have a wait list of 114 youth sitting in counties.
Yeah, I was going to jump back to that part of the presentation where it does go up and down. I think our peak was 152, but we're at 104. So
I think our peak was 165, man.
165. Okay. So, like, take Giddings for example. Huge campus. How many acres do we have there?
A lot. Yes, I don't know, ma'am, a lot.
Right.
It is a very large campus.
I'm sure I
Yes.
could call somebody in Giddings, but get me that. And that campus was really built as a youth facility to, it had a lake, a fishing.
In 2018, it did not have a fence or razor wire.
Right.
So yes, it was not
Yeah, it
built
was really
for this.
built as a rehabilitation
Yes.
center. I spoke at graduations there in the beautiful chapel. I've been on that facility several times. And it's not an outlier in West Texas, Madam Chair. I mean, at least Giddings, it's right in the middle of the triangle on 290, easily accessed from really Austin, Houston. It's a midway point of Austin and Houston, just a little closer to Austin than Houston. But so when we kind of look at all of your struggles and we look at the staffing issues, I know we were just talking to Brian Collier. They have some staffing problems. Would you say that the adult is it easier to get a correctional officer for the adult population than it is for the youth or juvenile?
So I spent 10 years in adult corrections, and I recognize how wildly different they are. I think they're very different jobs that require different skill sets. For juvenile corrections, there requires a level of engagement that's not required with an adult. So it's not meant for everybody. And we do get a lot of former adult corrections folks coming over, and it is a transition for them to move away from the very directive, necessary approach to you have to have some engagement in this approach here. We really have to. Our charge is rehabilitation, it is education, and we have to do those things. And so I see them as very different. I started in juvenile corrections, and it was the 1-to-8 ratio. And the first time I went into an adult correction setting and they said 1-to-50 and 1-to-100, I was like, how on earth does this work? But it does, because adults function different. And so I don't know that his job recruitment is harder. I think it's just different.
So today, your population is today
732
730
with 114 on the wait list.
732 and 114 in our county
Correct.
facilities. Okay, so and again, you want to do. You mentioned mental health. We've had many meetings with CPS. We've had it with HHSC, and we're really looking at this. You mentioned that you had 478 reports of aggression on staff. Is that right?
Correct.
Over what period of time?
In a 1 year, fiscal year 24.
Fiscal year 24.
That's more than one a day.
Fiscal year 24. Okay. And so if someone has an aggression on your staff, are their sentences, are they I think new charges are filed. Is that correct?
It depends. So I have two sentencing structures. I have indeterminate sentence offenders and I have determinate sentenced offenders. Typically, people think that the determinate sentenced offenders are the most aggressive or violent. But I mean, frankly, when they figure out that if you assault a staff, I'm going to request that you go to prison, they manage their behavior quite well. It is my indeterminate sentence offenders who are 15 and 16 who are my most difficult and most problematic. When they turn 17, they recognize that the charges look different, that sometimes I ask the Chief Inspector General to request assistance from the local jail to keep them, but the 15 and 16-year-old indeterminates don't have a lot to lose and can have multiple assaults. And the consequence that I have is I can
When you
keep them
say that youth, they're going on to TDCJ when they age out, right?
the indeterminate, no ma'am.
The determinant is.
Possibly. It goes in front of the judge. The judge makes
Okay.
the decision.
But if they beat up an officer, they have a greater chance.
Yes, ma'am, they do. Yes.
Well, the other ones can do basically whatever they want.
And the indeterminate youth, it is very tricky. They have multiple attempts. They have multiple options to assault staff before they can be considered a determinate sentenced offender. And so until that point, there's not a lot of things I can do internally other than keep them in my deepest end violence intervention continuum. It would take, because they have to be a habitual offender, they have to have 2 assaults of a staff, and then they can come back with the DSO determination. But I cannot ask for an early transfer request until they assault again, right? So that DSO determination doesn't allow me to immediately then say, Judge, please send this person to prison. I have to wait.
I'm a little like Chairman Flores right now and thinking about new solutions and way to approach this. You know, I was doing, if you were able to take the 114, you're talking about 846 youth juveniles. And we just heard from TDCJ at 100 and, what are we at? 135,677 today, or maybe 135,835. So looking at 846 versus 135,835, you know, I'm challenged to say surely we can handle 846 in some way or another. So, Madam Chair, as we think outside the box, Chairman Flores, you know, I would say that we need to look at other states. Has there ever been a combined effort to take like a Texas Department of Criminal Justice and say, okay, we have the structure there, youth are different, but we create kind of a subsidiary, if you would, if we're in the corporate world, of saying, hey, we're going to, under the executive director and this very large board appointed by the governor, we're going to create what I would say in the corporate world, a subsidiary to handle 846 youth. Maybe probation is kind of a different thought out here. I would just say that we should throw all of our cards on the table and sort them out to see what's best. I know we've tried for a long time, but between the driver's license issue, I think that, you know, there's new chairman and new thought processes that maybe we can look at that.
Sure. I think we have to look at anything we can to try to solve this problem.
Yeah, I do. And I hear you about your approach and keeping. I do say this about correctional officers or juvenile detention officers is if you're in a unit where you're with a youth that has potentially killed someone or potentially raped someone. Maybe the term coach is maybe I want to save them. I think that we can, but we have to keep that that civil servant safe. And I maybe TDCJ. I'm sure Brian Collier will come busting through that door to say no. But
In about a minute.
there could be a process here where we could glean best practices and maybe find a way forward. So that's just my thoughts. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Perry.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm going to go a little bit different approach. We have this same issue in our public school classrooms. Our society has evolved into we're going to love these people back to normal. Well, there's two sides to love. There's tough love, too. And there's things that we as a society used to do we don't do anymore. There's no excuse for an assault by a 15-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 18. It doesn't matter. That's an assault. And so what is it that does not permit you to move them to determinate status? Is that an internal rule? Is that the criminal code? Is that a federal rule? What is it?
We have our Office of Inspector General Chief here, Daniel Guajardo, if he can.
No, I just need to
certainly
know what needs to be changed, and if it's in the jurisdiction that's changed, to change
It's a
it.
statute, and it needs to be.
Okay,
changed.
so if
So
we
if-
change the statute that if a 15-year-old assaults
One
an adult,
assault.
then they can become determinate status. Now, obviously, they can't go to criminal justice system at that point, but that kid knows at that point they have just crossed over potentially with an option that if they clean up their act between 15 and 17, that they get a different look. But I am done with kids poking teachers' eyes out with hangers in the classrooms and getting love back to normalcy. And I'm done with kids in your system getting by with it because they know how to play the system. And until we get back to that point where I'm going here, it's 10%. In the classroom, it's probably less than 5% that's running the whole experience. And we have a good system, and we spend a lot of system. I'm tired of the tail wagging the dog to where we're looking at doing something different. To your point, this is the first thing you've had in consistency. Let us play this out. Let's tweak the offender and not run it for 99% of the other staff, officers, and teachers and things. We find ourselves always making a recommendation to flip the system on its head because we didn't control 1%. And we just need to get tough with the 1%, the tough love aspect. And you know, kids are human nature. And back in the day when we had those, we knew consequences on the front end. We chose to do different. And I think kids today, given that option, which haven't generationally for the last few decades, we've raised a bunch of non-copers and non-compliers and they get by with it. It's time to go that way before we flip this system again on its head for a few bad people that all they need is a little discipline. And I would be willing to, with your guidance, Madam Chair, thread that needle how we need to, but it's time to get back to the basics. If some kid does that, show there's a consequence to it. And you guess what? The kids that are watching that, they probably will think twice before they do it.
They absolutely know. And I will tell you, this sort of investment is an investment in the morale of our staff, to know that we as a society care about them and that they're not disposable. They are first responders. They have a very difficult job and their safety is a priority, is one of the things that will help retention.
Senator Perry, I believe that Senator Whitmire had legislation on that. It did pass out of the Senate, I believe. Yeah, 2190 from 87 regular session. It died in the House.
I don't know if it would be your wheelhouse for
Yeah.
sure, but I would love to take that on if no one here wants
We'll
it.
get you the bill.
Get the
You could
bill.
Probably just
I would
refile it.
appreciate it. I'll file it next week.
Good.
Sir, it was on the sunset bill. We're happy to pass that back. on to you.
I just get me the language, get my office language. I'm done with coddling these kids into a society and only to be